Welcome back, everyone. Thank you all who signed up for our newsletter. For those of you who are new, I'm going to be pushing this video out to more people. My name is Josh Romer. I run all of the social media and marketing for Swiss Watch Company, who was founded by my dad, Stephen Romer. We will have an announcement for the sports watch today and how that's going to be going forward. The timeline, we're going to give you updated estimations as to when we'll have that done. And I'm going to ask my dad some questions that I get frequently. So one of the drawbacks of me being the one in charge of the social media is I have the contact with all the people, but my dad has all the answers. So to give a little bit of a qualifying background, my dad, for those of you who don't know, worked for the Swatch Group for how many years?
15 years?
15 years. So his experience in manufacturing is extremely extensive. On top of the 15 years, after he worked for Swatch Group, he started his own company, and he's been manufacturing for other brands for the last almost 15 years too?
Yeah, total about 35 years now.
35 years. So a lot of experience. Literally hundreds of thousands of watches that he has overseen the manufacturing for outside of Swatch Group. And then within Swatch Group, the numbers are in the millions. So a lot of experience. And one of the questions we get a lot, especially with the announcement of our new sports watch design and how unique it is how samples are done. It seems like everybody wants to start a microbrand. And while the barrier to entry is relatively non-existent now with being able to go over and pick up watches, to do your own design, that changes a little bit. So I've written up questions that I've gotten from people on Instagram on what it takes to sample out a watch, what processes we go through, and by we, I mean my dad. So I'm going to ask him the questions. One of the number one things we get is, where do you get the inspiration for your designs?
Inspirations for my design. I think a lot of it is just being outside. I like to walk a lot outside. We have a lake that's quite close by, and I go there quite often. Seeing products that other companies bring out, new technical barriers that are being broken that allow us to incorporate new manufacturing processes. Sometimes we are at the forefront of doing that. I believe we were at the forefront with the diver's watch in doing that with the superluminescent indexes that we were working on for a long time. And I believe, again, with the sports watch, we are going to come up with new integrated processes that allow new designs on watch dials, and we do not like to copy anything. And that's not part of the design, is going to a watch show and looking at watch cases that have no logo on it, and you think that looks good, and you slap a logo on it, and you think, well, this is my watch now. I wish everybody luck that does that, but it's not inspirational, I think, for watch lovers.
Yeah, it happens a lot, a whole lot. Which, I mean, one of the things my dad said to me, probably doesn't even remember saying it, and I'm going to paraphrase, and it's that a brand will make homage watches to sell watches, but they'll make their own designs to sell their brand. And that really stuck with me, and I think it's true, because no one's going to not deny that homage watches, they sell really well. A lot of brands sell a lot of homage watches, so more power to them. That's not what we're about, and that's all thanks to my dad and his designs. So what are the first steps in getting samples made? What if someone wanted to create samples, create their own watches, what's step number one?
Well, once your design is sound, it's looking at making technical drawings that allow for for samples to be made with the current tooling processes that is on case. That deals with the dial as well. If you have certain indexes that you want or a certain logo that is complicated to make, that deals with hands manufacturing as well. So there's an extensive tooling cost involved in it, somewhere in average between $5,000 and $10,000 cost for tooling that needs to be set aside in order to see, okay, does it in reality look the same as I envisioned it? And most of us don't have, we're not gifted with a 3D intellectual design. We can see it, we can envision things, but putting it on the board afterwards or putting it in actuality into a product, it hardly ever looks after it's the exact same like we envisioned it. And that's why designers are so important, that have that gift to freely open up their creative talent and bring something down that you as a brand owner would like to have. For me to make a design, it takes probably 6 months to a year in order to come to a point where I say, okay, I can see this now, how it will look like, and bringing that after it's into converting it actually into a product, that's still quite a bit of a challenge. And with the sports watch, with that ceramic ring that we're having, that was a rather big challenge to get to the point where we can say this quality that we want is achievable.
So to go back on what he said about tooling charges, $5,000 to $10,000, this will probably give you a little more insight as to why so many brands do go the route of taking parts that are already manufactured, putting them together. I've heard the term Frankenwatch used quite a bit, and going that route instead of creating an original design. So how much would it cost if you were to approach a manufacturer, take the parts they already have, and create a watch out of existing parts? What would the tooling charge be then?
It's almost zero. There's maybe a couple of $100 in there, depending on what you want to do with the logo. But if you print the logo on there, a couple of $100 will do it. And they will give you a free sample most of the time as well. So it's a low risk, and people that want to create their own business, it's enticing. But for those that get to see the product and that 5 or 10 other brands can have the same look after it, it's
that's where you run the real risk. And I mean, Google reverse image searching is becoming more of a thing. So I think within the next 5 years or so, this will slow down. It'll never stop. Anytime you can take a watch, put a logo on it, and make $10,000 to $20,000 on Kickstarter, as long as that's a thing, it's going to happen. So there's no getting around that. But I think it'll slow down as people become more savvy to what's happening there. So back to tech drawings. So for the ceramic dial or the ceramic ring on the sports watch, to design something like that is unique, how accurate do you need to be when you are designing a tech drawing with measurements? I know people, when we talk about cases, we're talking in millimeters, but how exact do you need to be on something on a smaller scale?
Well, your standard tolerances that you have is probably plus minus 0.1 millimeters, and then when you get into dials, it goes down in about 0.03 plus minus. So it has to become very, very accurate with it, and there's certain measurements within the case where you're within the microns. Anything and everything that deals with technical aspects of the case, water resistance, pressurized areas of the watch that need to make sure that the watch is conform. There the tolerances are normally about 0.03 of a millimeter, which is rather accurate. It's not accurate if you only have to make one, but if you have to make 1,000 that are exactly the same, then it becomes challenging.
Yeah, and that's so that's probably the second most common question I get is how many watches do you need to have made to create your own watch? A lot of people approach me with numbers like, I want to make 50 watches to get started out. If you approach a manufacturer, a high quality manufacturer, what would they, how willing would they be to work with you if you approach them with a number like 50 or 100?
If it's 50, if you want to make gold cases, then yes, they will work with you. If it's stainless steel, they'll kind of smile at you and say, thanks, but no thanks. The minimum order quantity that we're looking at is 500. We don't like to go below that. You can, but it's not necessarily something that in the quality segment that we are, that there's a lot of companies that accept orders like that. So 500 normally is the minimum order quantity, and the standard one is about 1,000 pieces.
And there's a cost factor to that too, right? It's not like even though they're willing to do 300, it would be significantly cheaper to do 300 versus 500.
Yeah, the price of 300 and 500 doesn't change that much overall. You're because the setup charges that you have for the equipment that you're running, the production is still the same. So you have to amortize that in 300 pieces versus 500, and the standard profit that companies want in order to manufacture these, they want the same profit if it were 300 or 500 cases. So financially it makes most sense starting with the 500 units.
And the third most common question, number one is cost that I get, number two is order quantities, and number three is time frame. About how long does it take to bring a sample to life physically, where you're holding it in your hands?
It can be anywhere from 6 months to about a year, depending on the complexity of the product that we're dealing with. With the sports watch, it'll take us about a year in order to achieve that, because we're dealing with manufacturing processes that are new, and in order to achieve that, you go through trial runs until you are really there where you can say, yes, now we can go about and do it. If you're dealing with off the shelf, a month.
So again, using pre-made parts has its advantages in the short term. So again, more power to people that do it. If anyone gets why they do it, we do, because we deal with the consequences of how long the sports watch has taken. For those of you who've followed us, the sports watch has been in the works for quite a while. And that's going to kind of segue into our next announcement and the time frame. So as we mentioned in the week before last, we will be doing some rework to the dials of the sports watch. And we're going to take that one step further. I don't know that it will affect the Kickstarter launch date. We're still shooting for May as a launch date with no solid date in mind yet. But it will affect the time we can get these out to reviewers. And as someone who has conversed with a lot of people who have been involved not only with our Kickstarter for the diver, but other Kickstarters, I watch all the YouTube reviews. I try to stay as up to date as possible. One of the main complaints I see from people, and we had the same problem ourselves with the diver, is when someone is reviewing a watch that's a prototype. A really common thing to be said by a reviewer is that this aspect will change, this will be better, and on and on and on. Anyone who's back to Kickstarter is familiar with this. We had the same thing with our diver. I don't want that And my dad doesn't want that to happen with the sports watch. We want you guys to have as accurate a representation as possible when we send these out for reviews. So we're going to take the extra step. We apologize. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer. It could be up to a month longer, maybe more. But we're going to take the extra step and make sure that they are as perfect as possible. They look great now. Honestly, we could probably send them out and be fine, but we want to go the extra step and make sure you are confident in what you're getting and you have the most accurate representation of what you'll be getting if you do decide to back us.
I think within a short period we'll have a watch that can be presentable under microscopic inspections. So we're looking forward to that. That we have a product that is as sound as a watch in this quality segment that we want to be, and we want to be in the high quality segment, but offer prices that are digestible by everybody.
Yeah, we're going to stay true to our model, keep it as affordable as possible, and like my dad said, we want to make sure that everyone we send it out to will be perfectly comfortable with them taking macro shots, which is really where the samples at wrist distance, they look fantastic. But when you get them under a macro lens, you start to see that they are samples. And like I said, we had that with the diver's watch. So that's why a lot of people did follow-up reviews with the production units. We want to avoid that this time around. I want to thank everyone that signed up for our newsletter yesterday and who read through the post. Again, this is more on the personal side, but my wife is having twins. My mom and dad are very excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I am very excited and also terrified. But because of where we live, to go to the doctor, it's kind of an all-day ordeal. And because twins is by nature a higher risk pregnancy, I'll be going to the doctor more frequently. So as I mentioned in my Instagram post the day before yesterday, I won't be as active on there, but I still will be answering DMs and be in constant contact with people. If you email, place orders, that'll still all be taken care of. But for those of you who haven't yet, if you want to support us, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel, sign up for our newsletter. I rarely send them out, but if I do send them out, it's worth opening. I'll put a link to the page where you can sign up for that in the description of the video. And thank you all again for watching.
Thanks. See you next week.
Why it's so common to see homage watches. Not only do they sell well, your phone's ringing.
Yeah. Do I go and get it?
Well,
it's Abby.
Oh, it's Abby? Oh, Abby. I'll just pause the video.
She has to check.
She had to double check. That's not. She's calling again.
I'm telling you.